one more time, welcome all of you. Thank you for joining me today for today's short webinar on understanding the power of the subconscious mind and overcoming negative self-talk. So yes, Preeta, we are going to talk about all that mental chatter. And we'll start with that all the mental chatter is not really a good or a bad thing. It depends on what are the, where it is coming from, what is the content of that chatter. So we'll come to that and I will answer your question for sure. So thank you for joining me today. There are some people, I can see my students, some of you here. Thank you for joining me. Always nice to reconnect. And I also see there are people that we may not have met before. So I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Arpita and I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I practice at Illuminations JLT. Apart from hypnotherapy, I am also a regression therapist, a family constellation facilitator. And I do spend a lot of time in corporate wellness and training as well. I'm also a teacher of clinical hypnotherapy, and that's my passion. Apart from therapy, teaching as well. This is not my first career. So as I said, the first innings of my career was into the corporate sector. I'm an MBA and I've worked in the corporate sector for more than 15 years. And then I was introduced to the field of mind sciences, to the field of holistic healing. And please keep your mics on mute, please, so that we don't have background noise. Thank you so much. And yes, many years back, when I got introduced to this field, it absolutely fascinated me. I've also experienced first-hand healing, just not for my own self, but also for my children. And that actually brought me to this line of work. And here I am today with you, sharing part of what I practice. I work with people all around the world, coming from different backgrounds, different nationalities. And my forte is in working with the unknown, the unconscious blocks, patterns that stop us from realizing our dreams. And I've been in Dubai for more than 13 years. I live with my family here. And yeah, that's about me in short. For the ones who've just come in, because I've seen a lot of people suddenly come in now in our room. You can use the chat box. If you have questions, please post it there. I will read them and I will answer each one of it before we end the webinar. Please keep your mics on mute so that we avoid any background noise. And I'm also aware that I think this webinar is also live on Facebook. So for the ones who are watching me through Facebook, also please put your comments. I may not be able to see it right now, but right after the webinar, I will go back and answer your queries. So today we are talking about, well, the subject is about negative self-talk. But just before getting into labeling it as negative or positive, I just wanted to give a little bit of background about what is self-talk, because we are first talking about self-talk and then we are putting it's negative and then we want to flip it to positive. So self-talk is very simple. It's our inner dialogue. It is the chatter that keeps happening in our head, part of which we are very conscious and partly we are not conscious of it. So think of this as your inner voice, as your inner supporter, as your inner critic. This voice, of course, changes with time, depending on a day, depending on the phase of our life. But all we are talking about today is this inner voice or the inner dialogue that we constantly have with our own selves. Sometimes we could be very much aware of it, that I am in this now, my inner critic has woken up today morning and I'm kind of penalizing myself. And many times this is absolutely unconscious. So we are not even aware of the kind of dialogue the kind of labeling that we are doing to our own selves. The conscious part is very easy to handle because when you're aware of something, more or less we deal with it. Today we will talk more about the subconscious part, the unknown part of this self-talk. So I don't want to make it very technical. I'll just have a couple of slides on what this means. So when we talk of self-talk, it's not linear. It is not that I think this and then I think that and then this happens. As you see in the diagram here, it's actually a cycle. It may start at any given point. Say, for example, there's a self-talk. When we say self-talk, in very simple language, what we are saying is what I accept as the truth about myself. Now, depending on what I accept as the truth about my own self, there are two things that simultaneously gets impacted. One is, of course, my external behavior, how I'm going to behave, how I'm going to perform. And the second thing is the start of creation of self-image, which is what? Which is nothing more than what others accept as the truth about me. So there are two truths we are talking about. One of what I accept as my own, that is the self-talk. And the image, this is external, what others will accept as the truth about me. Now, as you see, each one of them impact each other. They are not in isolation. It's like a dance that is happening between these three elements, and whichever way we start, whether we are focused on how others accept my truth, or there is a behavior that I'm able to see very consciously I'm not happy about, or my self-talk, they are interrelated. Now, in order to work on it, we need to be aware of all these three elements, because if we just look at one, we are going to miss out the other two. Now, what is negative self-talk? When, of course, self-talk in itself is neither good or bad. It is just that voice inside me. Negative self-talk is when it becomes negative. So when I am constantly criticizing myself, when I'm constantly saying I'm not good enough, or when I will never make it, these kind of statements is what we are simply calling as negative self-talk. Now, you can also read, if you just Google, you will have enough material to even understand that it's a huge subject in itself. For today's webinar, I have picked the most common, probably the 5 top areas in which where we can club and say these are your hotspots for negative self-talk. Let's look at what they are. If you are at home and if you have pen and paper with you, it will be helpful if you can just make your notes for yourself. I'm not asking you to share. This is a webinar. We are not going to go one-on-one, but this exercise can help you at least understand and narrow down to the kind of self-talk that we do to ourselves. Now, on that note, if you're going to do it as we progress, you may find that you do more than one kind of negative self-talk. We all do that. Just try for today's exercise, try to choose the one that is most impactful, which you feel is the heaviest for you. So, first way of, or the first group that we talk of is when we start to personalize everything that happens to us. So the number one is kind of negative self-talk is personalization, which means anything that happens around the world, with me, without me, I find a way to draw it back to me, in the sense, I should have done something else, or I could have done something else, or I knew I would fail in this. So it may be something as big as COVID, which is global, but you will end up thinking, I should have sanitized that better, I could have done this. So all these, making it about you all the time, and then starting that critic voice in our heads is what we call as personalization. The second thing is magnification. Simple, small matter becoming big. So if you feel that you get triggered with small things that happen in your day-to-day life, And you end up getting this feedback probably from others that it's just a small thing. Why are you so worried about it? Why are you making it so personalized towards you? This could hint towards magnification, which means there are certain things which we can let go, but because of this voice inside, which kind of makes it larger than life. That's magnification. A good way of knowing it is just by observation, seeing how sometimes others react. Like, look at, when I say others, big group of people, and see that is there a tendency for you to make it more difficult, more bigger. When I say bigger, it becomes very difficult to handle it. It's almost like it's overwhelming. That's when you know that your negative self-talk pattern is more about amplifying it, making it bigger than it actually is. And then the opposite of that is minimization. Is like almost denial, like, don't look at it, avoid it, not my story, not my game, though you know that it very much affects you. So magnification and minimization are polar opposites. Ideally, we should be somewhere in between, and we'll come to that why we can't stay in between, and why we have this kind of negative self-talk. But it's like a swinging pendulum. So from magnification, when we look at behavior modification, sometimes we tend to go towards, as if nothing has happened. And it's very painful. It's very painful later to look at what we have overlooked, or it could be actions based on minimization could also be painful for people around that person, because it's kind of everything gets minimized. So it's almost like, a sense of rejection towards self and towards others. Like, for example, you have an accident and you've got hurt. It's like, it's fine, it's okay. That's like, I'm not even worthy of this attention that my body needs at the moment. Because something in your head keeps saying that it's okay, you can deal with it. It's too small, get up, move on. The next one is, and the most common one that I see as a practicing therapist, is when we label ourselves. So that whatever happens, again, when I say whatever happens, I'm talking about triggers. And we live in a world where there's triggers all the time. And the moment something goes against our plan, if you catch yourself saying you're stupid, you're not good enough, you're lousy, this is the limit to which you can work, you're too emotional, these are all labels. So labeling is one very, very, very important aspect of negative self-talk, because it reinforces. And if you think of your own labeling, if I think of my own, you will find those keywords that you keep telling yourself. So one of the most common and very impactful negative self-talk is constantly labeling our own selves. And the last one is, it's almost like an authority talking in your head, like something again has happened, a trigger in the environment, and your response to that is, you should have done this, you should have done that, you should have thought about it. So any should statement is, again, very, very heavy. The way to counter it is, as Louis Hay says, if you could have, you would have done it. So if you catch yourself saying, or not only for situations which have already happened, this can also be for something that you want to do, and then you look at, what could possibly go wrong, and for each one of them you have like, I should be doing this if this goes wrong. So anything with should is very, very, very dodgy. So if you find yourself telling yourself all the time, because it can either get you anxious for the future things that you want to do, or it could really make you feel very, very guilty. So you can take a moment to look at which out of these kind of resonate with you. If they do, then make a note of it. I'll run you through an example, and this is an exercise I will leave with you that you can practice before I go into the details of how we generate negative self-talk and how the subconscious mind, the power of the subconscious mind, we can even harness to get over that. So just identify your theme for your negative self-talk. Then going into the identification impact on the two other things we said, because self-talk will impact behavior and self-talk will impact self-image and vice versa. And once you've done that, then you flip it. You then change this statement of negative self-talk into a replacement statement that you can tell yourself every time you catch yourself going back to negative self-talk. So just a very small example. Say if I have identified that out of those 5 that we discussed now, labeling is something that I do to myself. And every time things don't go my way, my statement is, I am a loser. So every time I face an obstacle or I don't achieve what I planned to, the voice inside my head says, see, I told you you're a loser. Now, how do I flip it? Before I go there, I have to identify the impact on 2 things, behavior and self-image. Say, for example, for behavior, what do I do when I hear this voice, I'm a loser, I'm a loser? Well, when I hear it too much, I just stop doing things. I just give up even before trying. That's a very tangible behavior where we kind of move away from it. So when you're doing this exercise for yourself, boil it down to a very tangible behavior that you can, catch yourself doing. And as a result of this behavior and this labeling that I am a loser, what happens to my self-image? My self-image is I am incompetent. Now remember, I am a loser, give up before trying, and incompetent are feeding on each other. So we have to take all the 3 elements into consideration when we are talking of flipping it. And what would I rather want to feel? So if I could have a magic pill tonight and then I wake up in the morning tomorrow with this labeling gone out of my system, ask yourself, what is it you want to feel? Or that will give you the statement of the replacement statement or the positive self-talk. So for me, for example, I've put, I learn from my mistakes and I'm an achiever. So how this helps, this is what I'm doing with you is a very conscious exercise. I'm going to come to the subconscious part a little later. Every time now that I catch myself telling myself I'm a loser or reinstating that again, see, I told you you're a loser, I will change that statement very consciously. And instead of saying a loser, I'm going to say, I made a mistake and I'm learning from it. And that is what makes me an achiever. So again, I'm going to leave this with you from a very conscious mind perspective. So every time the thumb rule is we will go back to labeling because probably this is a habit that's been developed over many, many years and it may not go overnight, but a conscious way of doing it is just having in mind this sentence and flipping it every time you catch yourself doing it. The other way, and it's partly conscious and partly subconscious way of doing this, is if you could write down this statement in post-its and the yellow sticky notes and just put them somewhere in your room, maybe even in your washroom when you're brushing your teeth, so that you can look at it. Now, looking at it doesn't mean you have to stare at it. Looking at it, I mean, it's in your vicinity, it's in your peripheral vision. So it's a constant reminder to your conscious as well as your subconscious mind. So you can try this and let me know if you notice a change. Now, moving on, let me just check the chat box once. How do you stop mind chatter, Preeta? This is one way. So if you want to try it consciously, you can try this exercise. If not, we are coming to the subconscious part. So then it's a multi-million-dollar question for all of us, right? That we are all victims of some form of negative self-talk, one way or the other. So the question comes that why do I feel this way? Because consciously I know this is not the right thing to do, and yet a bigger part of me just doesn't allow me to be anything else. And consequently, what can I do to change? So in today's webinar, we are saying that we are not getting into individual therapy here. We are just talking of ways of first understanding that first and foremost, the moment you become aware of your pattern, the moment you become aware of your type of negative self-talk, half the job is done, which in itself is what we are calling as transformation. So from if whatever time, like 20 minutes into the webinar, if you've been able to diagnose your style of negative self-talk, and you've been able to keep in mind an affirmation or a sentence that you will use, your awareness and your transformation has already started. And then if you think of it, today we are talking of self-talk, negative self-talk, which means we are talking about thoughts, which brings us to the topic of thoughts and the connection with our mind. So if this thought, because thought is producing the negative self-talk, if these thoughts have the power to determine how we feel, that means how we habitually think will eventually decide how we habitually feel. So there's a connection between these thoughts, this voice, our feelings. Then if what we're trying to do in any kind of therapy, in any kind of holistic work, is we ultimately want to be happy, which means ultimately we want to change the way I'm feeling. I do not want to feel like a loser. It makes me sad. My aim is to flip that and help me feel motivated, like I'm learning, I'm achieving things, which means fundamentally for us to shift our feelings from negative to positive, we need to fundamentally shift the way we think. And that's the power of thoughts. That's the power of mind that we will be talking about. Where do they come from? They're, of course, not falling from the sky first thing in the morning and we are catching our thoughts and then taking it into our lives. We don't, right? Thoughts are obviously influenced by our own experiences that we store in our mind and also our beliefs. So there are two things we will look at. We look at belief systems and we'll look at the mechanism by which we are storing our experiences into the mind, which means now we are going to enter the zone of understanding the human mind, because that's where the meat is for today's webinar. So when we talk of mind sciences, we are talking about, it could be many modalities. It could be hypnotherapy, it could be metaphor therapy, it could be coaching style NLP. What I have chosen for today is hypnotherapy, but you could use, it's not necessary that it has to be only that. Let me just check. There's a comment and then I will go, because the mind will take a bit of a time. Neha, I am not reading it out loud, but I have noted your comment, and let me come back to it by the end of the webinar, because I'm not sure this is only negative self-talk or it could be a little more deeper than that, but I've made a note to it. I will come back to you. Okay. So, sorry, going back to mind science. Just give me a moment. I'm just going to put the slide up. Okay. So, coming to understanding now, how is this negative self-talk being generated? Of course, we are not wishing it, and of course, it's not falling from the sky, which brings us to mind science. So my question to you is, especially to the ones who are not my students, who have not studied hypnotherapy yet, is what do you think is mind? Because we are now entering the zone of these thoughts, of the emotions, of the belief systems, which actually propel us to create that voice. So Any thoughts of what do you think is this mind, which is probably storing, generating, influencing our thoughts? Yeah, anyone? Apart from my hypno students? No, everyone is thinking. So when I found this question very fascinating as a student of hypnotherapy many years back when I was studying this modality, and then you realize that we talk so um, like in everyday language we talk up the mind, but when we are asked to define it and we then start thinking, yeah, what is it? Is it my brain? So no, it is not your brain. Your mind and your brain are two different things completely. Now, even if you look at, and I did look up at that time, the Oxford Dictionary definition of mind, it says it's the element of a person that enables them to be aware of the world and their experiences. The beauty of this explanation is that it's an element of a person, which means it's an intangible asset. So my mind and your mind, these are intangible assets with which we are experiencing life, which we are finding what is around us, we are responding to it. So it is the faculty of consciousness, it is the faculty of thought, it is what which makes us think, what makes us feel. Keeping it very simple, the way I'd like you to look at it from the view of today's webinar is imagine mind to be an intangible asset vis-a-vis your brain to be your more tangible asset. Like brain can be touched, can be felt, but mind cannot be. So mind in itself, mind is nothing but a tool that we have. It's a force. Now, the question is that am I in charge of my mind, or my mind has taken control of me? If I am able to understand that mind is a tool that I can use to my benefit, I promise you will be free from negative self-talk. But if there is an element of negative self-talk that is creeping into your mind, it means you have now been enslaved by your own mind. So the tool is controlling you rather than you controlling the tool. The most easy way of understanding mind is versus the brain is looking at it from a hardware and a software perspective. So I'm connecting to you through my laptop, which is the hardware. So every time I have to change the slide or I have to read your comment, I am still going to press certain keys on my laptop. Brain, like the physical body, is that hardware. However, just having the laptop doesn't allow me to connect to you on this platform called Zoom. I'm also using a software, and I'm using many softwares. I'm using, for example, Microsoft PowerPoint for this presentation. I'm using Zoom. The software is like the mind. So we work when these two work in tandem. The mind, the software, actually works on the hardware through our brain, and this is how we experience life. So today we are not looking at negative self-talk from a neuroscience or a brain perspective. We are purely going to look at it from the mind perspective. Now, the other very interesting thing that I find when I'm describing or explaining what is mind is in holistic sciences, many a times we say that mind is a vibrating ball of energy located all around you, the center of which is at the pit of your stomach. Yeah, it is a kind of little weird when you hear it for the first time, but just imagine that this software, this invisible software, is all around us. It's like a field. The mind is like a field in which we are. The most interesting part of this is the center, the epicenter of this sphere is the pit of the stomach. Now, if you look at human anatomy, and if you actually go to the pit of the stomach, what you find there is the intestine. Gut, as we say it. And that's where the term gut feeling comes from. Technically, your and my gut doesn't feel a thing. It's part of the gastrointestinal tract, which digests the food we eat. Yet each one of us, I'm pretty sure, have used this phrase, I have a gut feeling that it's going to rain in Dubai tomorrow. Or I have a very bad feeling about this deal not going through. Why we say it is because that intelligence with which you're living your life, the intelligence what we call as mind, The center of that is situated at the gut. So if we go by that definition of this whole sphere that is all around us, the center of which is at the pit of the stomach, imagine this is the sphere. I have a comment on it is stored. Neha says it's a storage unit which stores everything that happens in our life. Yes, Neha, I think you were defining mind. Yes, you are very right. What you're defining is the subconscious mind. I'm coming to that, but yes, your definition is right. So if this is the sphere, of course, we know that the mind has two parts. There's the conscious mind, and then there's the subconscious mind. Imagine this to be like an iceberg. So the conscious mind is the part of the iceberg that we see in an ocean. And as we all know, we only see 1/10 of the entire iceberg. The rest of the iceberg is always submerged. Same is with the structure of the mind. We are only aware of the conscious part, which is roughly 10%. Most schools of holistic sciences actually say it's around 4 or 5%. But even with 10%, imagine there's a 90% which is below our level of consciousness. That is the reason we say subconscious. What does conscious mind do? So conscious mind has many functions to run. As you see, it thinks, it creates logic, it analyzes, we feel, we make decisions, we judge. It is like the CPU of your computer, the central processing unit. We are constantly getting information, we are processing it, we are reacting. That is the conscious part. Now, how does the conscious part work with the negative self-talk? We tell ourselves, today was the last day. Tomorrow morning onwards, I will not allow a single bad thought to come in my mind. When we say this, it's not a bad thing. We are very logically telling ourselves, this is all not helping me, and tomorrow morning onwards, I'm going to change. But when the tomorrow morning comes, for certain reasons, we are not able to do that. And I'll tell you why. Because if this negative self-talk doesn't come from your conscious mind, it's definitely then coming from your subconscious mind. Now look at the functions of the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind doesn't have those 10 things that conscious mind does. Subconscious mind has two very simple yet extremely critical functions. Number one, it keeps us alive. So all our voluntary movements, like now I'm moving my hands as I'm talking to you, this is controlled by my conscious mind. But there are so many things that are happening in my body at the same time. For example, my breath is going up and down, my liver is functioning at a certain rate, my kidneys are functioning. I have zero conscious control on them. The autopilot that runs in our body is run by the subconscious mind. Hence, even if we try, we are not able to control, if you look at it, most part of our body movements. And the second function which Neha highlighted is right. Subconscious mind is like the hard drive of your computer, where every moment of your life, even your prenatal memories, are stored. So imagine it's a house, it's a room full of archives where every experience of your life has been stored. So conscious mind is like the CPU and your subconscious mind is like the hard drive. Now, why does it become so difficult to break negative self-talk? Is because, as I said with my last example, that tomorrow morning I'm going to change it. Now, when we say that, we are saying it very consciously. The strength of the conscious mind with which we are saying this, if it is 1x, the strength of the subconscious mind is 6,000 times x. So when tomorrow morning actually comes and something goes off the table, I again say, I'm such a loser. Now that's not coming from my conscious, because if it did, I would have worked on it. Why it becomes almost impossible to control that mental chatter is because this may be coming from the space which is 6,000 times stronger. And what is this space? This space again broadly has two parts. It has what we call as modern memory. This is my memory. From the time that I have been conscious, it is all the experiences that I've gone through in life is stored here. But it doesn't end with that. In the subconscious part of our minds, we also have a space which we call as primitive memory. Now, you can call it evolutionary memory, DNA, genetics, or you could even call it memories that are passed down to us through our ancestors. Now, these experiences, these memories are way, way, way stronger. And there may be many, many files in my modern memory and in my primitive memory that constantly reinforces that I am a loser. And when a new trigger comes from the environment, the voice, the negative self-talk that I see is like a domino effect that is happening in the subconscious mind. So with that one part of the string that you pull, that you can actually take out the entire string on a rug in a similar way, like or a domino, like one falls and all the connected files, imagine, in your subconscious mind trigger. And then the chatter becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So this is, we said two parts. It can come from your experiences. When I say experiences, I'm also including ancestral experiences here. And the second is it can come from very, very unconscious, but yet very strong belief systems. Each one of us have our own belief system. So when we talk of belief systems, we are talking actually of the third part of our mind, what we call as the critical mind, the thinking mind again. This critical mind is formed in the first 8 years of our lives. So between the age of 0 to 8 is when we start to form our belief systems. What affects our belief systems? There are 4 things that affect us. One is our, as you see in the slide, it's called SEER. The S stands for socio, which means the family, the society, the community in which we are growing up. Economic, the financial condition of the environment where we are, the family where we are. Education, the kind of education that we have received or not received, and our religious beliefs. In very simple words, this is called conditioning. And dependent on this conditioning, there may be belief systems that we carry. Some we may be aware of, but many times we are absolutely unaware of these belief systems. But for example, what could be an example of a belief system that can lead to negative self-talk? I am not good enough. I am not worthy of love. I am a loser. All these are actually probably unconscious belief systems that we have picked up as children. And then every time something in our environment moves in a way we don't want, we fall back on these belief systems. The critical mind or our belief system freezes at the age of 8. So imagine if this is the software we are talking about, this software is being developed in the first 8 years of our lives. And for the rest of our lives, we are just running that program. Hence, in any culture, any religion, any part of the world, you'll see people say that be very careful how you speak to children. Or they say that the mind of the children are like sponges. They're going to absorb everything you say because they literally don't have a filter. And this is how belief systems are formed. On that note, none of us are 8 years old, and it doesn't mean that we are all lost cases. There are techniques, there are therapeutic modalities that you can take help of if you believe that there is a belief system that is causing this mental chatter for you. And there are ways to change those belief systems that do not serve you purpose anymore. I'm going to take a pause because this slide has a lot of information. I'm going to check the chat box as well. If there are any questions, please let me know. And my chat is not showing. Hi, Preetham. Preetham says the gut feeling theory is really a mind-blowing one. Yes, I could go on, Preetham, maybe if I have time later. Um, there's much more to it. But yes, this is how we say we have a gut feeling. It is actually, you can call it intuition, you can call it intelligence. It is your mind's way. It is the epicenter of the mind. Okay. So unless there are more questions, then I will go back. And we're going to look at now, with this knowledge of your subconscious mind, how we are storing information, how we are interpreting information, and how we are then making those belief systems. So your distorted self-image, your distorted negative self-talk could have come, or it maybe is coming from either the belief system, or it could also be coming from your experiences. Now, how do we then change it? As I said earlier, there are many modalities in mind science that can help you. Again, it depends on which one you find interesting and what resonates with you. Today, I'm going to talk about hypnotherapy as one of the modalities, one of the most effective, certainly very, very safe modality that can help flip that negative belief system. Now, again, for ones who are very new to this line of work, when we are talking about hypnotherapy, I have to share my screen. Give me one moment, please. So hypnotherapy is very different probably from what we think it is, because it depends on when I'm thinking of my journey when I came in to this line of work. I wasn't even sure of what happens in a hypnotherapy session. So just to clear your doubts, you can ask any questions if you anything that comes to your mind. I'm just going to give a very short brief of what is hypnotherapy. The word hypnotherapy comes from the word hypnosis, and the word hypnosis comes from the Greek word hypnos. When you translate hypnos into English, it literally translates into nervous sleep, which you look at here and you say that, okay, but that's a paradox. You cannot be sleeping when you're nervous, and you cannot be nervous if you're sleeping. What it means is hypnosis is a state in which your physical body is as relaxed as you are sleeping, but your mind is agile, is nervous. Now, when I say nervous, this is not anxiety nervous, this is being hyperactive, this is being agile. So what I'm technically saying is that your software is very much alive and interacting. However, your hardware, your body is very, very relaxed. It's an altered state of mind, but it is nothing extraordinary. Each one of us experience hypnosis every single day, at least twice a day. So when you wake up in the morning and the moments between when you're completely awake and you're completely sleeping, that state is the hypnotic trance. And similarly, when you're dozing off to sleep, you put your book down, you switch off the light and you turn around and you're going to just now fall asleep. That phase between being completely awake and completely sleeping is called the hypnotic trance. So it is nothing new for neither your mind nor your body. And it is an extremely deep state of relaxation. If I have to explain this in terms of brain waves, when we are awake, we are in the beta state. When we start to doze off or when we drift into a hypnotic trance, we are going from beta to alpha, from alpha to theta. And that's how theta is also another, theta healing is a modality. And from theta, we move into delta, and delta is when we fall asleep. So your brain waves, instead of going high with the amplitude and the wavelength, it kind of tapers down and slows down. This is the state that we use to access the subconscious mind. And hence, this now hypnosis and therapy together becomes hypnotherapy. There are many myths about hypnotherapy. I'm just going to quickly run through it. Many people, and this is all from my own practice. These are the questions I get asked almost every day with new clients. Hypnosis doesn't mean you are not, you're helpless. Like there's a difference between hypnotism and hypnotherapy. What you see in movies or what you see in stage hypnosis is very, very different. So that's mind control. Hypnotherapy is not mind control. The presence of your conscious mind is still there. So in hypnosis, you do not fall asleep. You remember what happens in the session, and you're not at all helpless. If anything goes, if you're uncomfortable, you can always talk to your therapist and explain it. So it's not that you lie there completely gone into a different dimension. Doesn't happen at all. You're very much there, yes, but you're in a very deeply relaxed state. Not everybody can be hypnotized is also not true. We are all hypnotized each and every day. When you're watching TV, you're binging on Netflix, you're getting up in the morning, you're going to sleep. These are all hypnotic trances. Yes, but we do not in therapy. Hypnosis only happens with permission. So it's never by force. Hypnosis is not same as sleeping. In a hypnotherapy session, you very well know what's happening around you, not asleep. Hypnosis makes you reveal deep, dark secrets, not at all. Hypnotherapy sessions have clear objectives, and we only work on that objective. There is no unraveling of anything that you don't want to talk about. Hypnotherapy is like magic. It's a mystical practice. It's not, it's an absolute clinical practice, and each one of us, if we want, can become hypnotherapists. It doesn't require any special power. So as a hypnotherapist, I have no special power. The only thing I've done is I've studied and I've practiced, and each one of us can do it. I have just explained this, that when you look at the states in which we are, if you look, and now now that the understanding you have of the conscious and the subconscious mind, you see the subconscious mind doesn't matter whether we are awake, we are sleeping, or we are under hypnosis. The subconscious mind is always awake and always in control. Why? Because subconscious mind controls our internal organ functions. So there is no way. Subconscious mind sleeping means we are no longer alive. The only change that happens between these three states is happening in our conscious minds. When we are awake, like how we are at the moment, the conscious mind is totally in control. In sleep, when at night we are sleeping, there is no control of the conscious mind. But in hypnosis, conscious mind is still active, it is still awake, but the control is no longer with the conscious mind. The control passes over to the subconscious, and hence we are able to identify. Now go back to that slide where you saw those files. Now imagine one of those files that you saw there is corrupted. By corrupted, I mean the file has a charge that starts off that negative self-talk. So what we do with hypnotherapy, with mind science, is to rewire that file that is causing this negative self-talk. When I say we rewire it, we do not delete files. So it's not that something has happened in my past and I am going to delete it. No. What has happened in the past will remain in the past, and we are nobody to say it didn't happen. We never erase an experience. We never delete a file. We neutralize it. When I say neutralize, just imagine with those files, a single file or a couple of corrupted files in your hard drive. So what happens is, when you're plugging in your hard drive to your computer, of course your computer doesn't function. This is exactly what happens when something in your environment triggers those files in your subconscious and you're trying to operate the computer, which is your life, it crashes. So our job is to go, if I want to get rid of my negative self-talk, I have to go to my subconscious. Hypnotherapy is one route to go in. Say, for example, I'm going to use hypnotherapy to go into my subconscious, drop there, and find out those files that are blipping. And then I'm going to get the files out of my hard drive, which is my subconscious mind, and I'm going to paste it on my desktop. All I'm doing is I'm bringing to my awareness all those repressed experiences, all those unconscious belief systems that I'm carrying into my consciousness. When I am conscious about it, I can work on it and I can let it go. When we say we neutralize this experience, it means the emotional charge that has gotten attached to those files, to those experiences, to those belief systems, I'm going to take that charge away. That is the therapy. That is the therapeutic inputs then come into place. The other thing we do is we dissociate your being with your experience. Because what happens with these corrupted files or defected files which are creating your negative self-talk is you and your experience has fused together. So I am allowing my experience of failure in some point of my life to get enmeshed with my identity, and then I say I'm a loser. That's the negative self-talk. So under hypnosis, we dissociate it. I am who I am, and I have had an experience of failure. And this is very different from saying I am the failure and I will always be the failure. And the moment we are able to detach this, we detach ourselves from that experience. This is when that neutralization starts to happen. I am able to let go of the toxicity that I am carrying. In very simple terms, we are rewiring or we are reprogramming our thoughts and our belief systems by healing out the subconscious patterns from the past, which are today conflicting with my conscious desire. So my conscious desire is to succeed at my work. But I have a belief system, I am a loser. So they are opposing. So my conscious desire and my subconscious pattern is in loggerheads. And why this negative self-talk wins is because, remember, it comes from a space that is 6,000 times stronger. So we go into that space and we kind of neutralize, detoxify it. We can also use hypnotherapy to plant in new belief systems, because this belief system of I am a loser is not serving me. So I'm going to change that and say I'm learning, which is what we did as the conscious exercise before. Typically in a hypnotherapy session, we would be doing this, but the impact of this is way more because now we are working in the zone which is 6,000 times stronger. So it's, for me, it is a simple 80-20 principle. I work with the subconscious because the impact of that is way more than working just on the conscious part. So you could put both of them together and lo and behold, you'll see how your life dramatically changes and how you flip your negative self-talk into more positive affirmations. And that is all I had in terms of the content for today's webinar. But of course, I'm going to check the chat box, and if there's anything that you have, any questions, I will be more than happy to answer them. Neha, there's one question that I didn't answer earlier. I'm going to just take a moment to go back to that. Neha, you have direct messaged me. Could you tell me, is it okay for me to read it out, or do you want me to answer that later personally to you? Okay, yeah, I thought so. So maybe maybe I will talk to you later after the webinar. So you can just stay back after everyone leaves and I'll answer your question. Okay. Great. I'm just going to go through the chat box and check if there's any other questions. If you feel like you could type it in, or you could unmute yourself and ask me as well. How do you minimize negative self-talk in kids? I am not good at this. Yes, very interesting. See, it becomes now that you know that the belief systems are formed very, very early between ages 0 and 8. Um, a good way of doing it, okay, let me come to you with a couple of things. One is practice what you preach. So kids follow us more than, actions are louder than words. So try to change consciously when I'm talking about it, Preetham, try to change the language. The example that you gave, I am not good at this, could be replaced by I am very good at dash something else. Or I am learning to be good at this. So even when we talk of affirmations, there are 3 rules of affirmations or suggestions, as we say, that we should talk in the present. We should never say, I am going to get good at it. We say, I am getting good at it. Second rule is we do not use negating words like not. Like, for example, I am not weak. Instead of that, we say, I am strong. And it should happen in the present. So clearly with your example, Preetham, I would say that I am learning to be good at this. I am better at something else. So just flip those negations very, very consciously. There will be times when it just slips out. With kids, be very transparent. That works for me when I, not only for my own children, but also for the children that I work with at the center, because they watch us more. So you have to also practice what you're telling them. And when you catch yourself slipping out of it, be very transparent and said, I think I said this, but I would like to rephrase it. And then look at all the 4 factors, Pritam, the socio, the economic, the education, and the religious beliefs. These are your 4 pillars, which are consciously, subconsciously sending inputs to the children, and see if there is anything that needs to change, that needs to move, and just keep flipping. The less of the negative words, same sentence can be said in a very different way. Let me know if that answers you. If not, I will try and rephrase. Neha says, hello, I do have a question. I do have sugar cravings, severe one. Do you think listening to sugar fighting affirmations, which is found online on YouTube before sleeping, might help? It might help. Try, Neha. It of course does. See, when you say when you're listening before sleep, it means you are listening in that hypnotic trance. Different things work for different people. Cravings, addictions are. I'm not saying that it will not work with affirmations. Sometimes it works beautifully. It could have even deeper roots into some gap that you're trying to fill. So it's not necessarily negative self-talk. It could be a void. It could be something unconscious, of course, not that it's conscious that you're trying to fill. So affirmations may work, but you may also need to look at the diagnostics. Like remember from the slides, as we said, that there will be certain files that are corrupted. There's something that is creating it. So just working with the affirmations works very well. Suggestion-based therapy works, but I am more of a fan of doing the diagnostics, trying to understand where it comes from, and then put on the affirmations on top. So a more holistic approach is what, if you ask me as a therapist, that's what I would suggest. Okay, thank you. Just going through the chat to see if there's anything that I have missed. Okay, Pritam says understood. Okay, I don't see any other new questions. I am here online for a while, so if there's Anything you want to ask, please feel free. Thank you, Preeta. For anyone who is further interested in knowing more about subconscious mind, this is the course we run here every year round. Actually, level ones happen every second month. So if that interests you, you can always contact Illuminations and book a slot. If there are more questions that you would want to know, ask about hypnotherapy, about mind sciences, you can ask me now, or you could contact Illuminations and ask for a free consultation with me, and I'll be more than glad to answer your questions.